Hey guys, welcome back to Fantasy Hub. Today's story is one of my favorites.
It started on a Sunday morning in October, the kind of crisp autumn day that makes you believe in fresh starts, even when you're old enough to know better. I was browsing through the Henderson Street flea market, not looking for anything in particular, just killing time the way you do when your biggest decision of the day is whether to have one cup of coffee or two. I'd been retired for 3 years by then. 40 years of being a nurse, 40 years of 12-hour shifts, of holding hands with the dying and celebrating with the living, and suddenly nothing. Just me, my small apartment, and way too much. Time to think about all the things I'd missed while I was busy saving other people's lives. That morning, I was examining a vintage medical bag, probably from the 1940s, still in decent condition when I felt someone watching me. You know that feeling, right? When the hair on the back of your neck stands up and you just know someone's eyes are on you. I turned around and there she was. Tall, athletic build, honey-colored hair pulled back in a messy bun, and the most impossibly green eyes I'd ever seen. She was maybe 38, 39, young enough to be my daughter, which should have been my first warning sign. She was wearing designer athletic wear that probably cost more than my monthly rent, but she was staring at that old medical bag like it held the secrets of the universe. "That's a beautiful piece," she said, stepping closer. Her voice had this slight accent, not quite American, not quite European. Later, I'd learned her mother was Swedish, her father Italian-American, and she'd spent her childhood ping-ponging between continents following her tennis career. "It is," I agreed, running my fingers over the worn leather. "Probably belonged to a country doctor. See these scuff marks? This bag made a lot of house calls." She smiled then, and I swear to God, it was like someone had turned on a light. "You know about medical history?" I should. I was a nurse for 40 years. Her eyes lit up with genuine interest. "Really? What kind of nursing?" Most people, when they hear you're a nurse, they either immediately start telling you about their mysterious rash, or they nod politely and change the subject. But she leaned in like I just told her I was a spy or a rock star. "Emergency medicine. Mostly some ICU work. You see everything in the from heart attacks to Saturday. Night bar fights to women giving birth in the parking lot because they couldn't make it inside in time." She laughed, a rich sound that made something in my chest flutter. "That sounds incredible and terrifying." It was both. I studied her face, trying to place why she looked familiar. "What about you? What do you do?" Something flickered across her expression, amusement, maybe, or mischief. "I hit balls for a living." I must have looked confused because she grinned. "Wider, tennis, professional tennis." And that's when it clicked. Claudia Price. I'd seen her face on magazine covers and grocery store checkout lines, though I'd never paid much attention to tennis. But even I knew who she was, one of the top players in the world, known as much for her aggressive playing style as for her habit of getting into heated arguments with referees. "Holy shit," I said before I could stop myself. "You're Claudia Price." She winced slightly. "Guilty as charged." "Please don't ask for a selfie. I'm trying to have a normal morning for once." "Wouldn't dream of it," I said, though I was definitely staring now. "What's a famous tennis player doing at a flea market in suburban Chicago?" "Same thing as a retired nurse, I imagine. Killing time, looking for something interesting." Her eyes met mine again, and I think I found it. Was she flirting with me? I couldn't tell. It had been so long since anyone had flirted with me that I'd probably forgotten how to recognize it. My late husband Jack had been gone for 8 years, and in all that time, I hadn't so much as looked at another person with romantic interest. I was 62 years old, gray-haired, and my idea of excitement was finding a good book at the library sale. But there was something about the way she looked at me, like she was seeing something I didn't even know was there. Well, I said, suddenly feeling ridiculous. I should probably have coffee with me, she interrupted. There's a cafe around the corner. Unless you have somewhere urgent to be. I thought about my empty apartment, my quiet Sunday stretching endlessly ahead of me. I suppose I could spare an hour. The Grand Cafe was one of those hipster places with exposed brick walls and baristas who took their art more seriously than most surgeons take surgery. Claudia ordered some complicated drink with oat milk and 3 shots of espresso. I got black coffee, which earned me an approving nod from the heavily tatted guy behind the counter. We found a table in the corner, away from the Sunday morning crowd. I watched Claudia wrap her hands around her cup, noticed the slight swelling in her left wrist. Old injury? I asked, nodding toward her wrists. She looked surprised. How did you— oh, right, nurse. Yeah, from about 3 years ago. It acts up when the weather changes. Without thinking, I reached across the table and gently took her hand, running my thumb over the swollen area. Scaphoid fracture, close. Hamate fracture, hook of hamate, specifically. Her voice had gone soft. She wasn't pulling her hand away. Nasty injury for a tennis player. I'm surprised you came back from it. Took a year of rehab. Most people said I should retire. She was looking down at our joined hands now, but I'm too stubborn to quit. I should have let go of her hand. It was inappropriate on about 17 different levels. Instead, I found myself gently massaging the area around the old injury, using techniques I'd learned decades ago in physical therapy rotations. Better? I asked after a moment. She looked up at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Much better. That's when I realized we were having what could only be described as a moment. The kind of moment that happens in movies where two people lock eyes across a table and suddenly the rest of the world falls away. I'd had exactly one such moment in my entire life, and that was with Jack when we were both 23 and thought we had forever. I was definitely too old for this. So, I said, finally releasing her hand and reaching for my coffee, what brings a world-famous tennis player to Chicago? Don't you live in Florida or California or wherever famous athletes live? She laughed. I have a house in Miami, yeah. But I grew up about an hour from here in a little town called Millfield. My mom still lives there. I try to visit when I can between tournaments. That must be difficult with your schedule. It is. The tour is consuming. 10 months a year, sometimes more. Hotels, airports, training facilities, press conferences. Wash, rinse, repeat. She paused, stirring her coffee thoughtfully. It gets lonely. There was something in her voice, a vulnerability that didn't match the fierce competitor I'd seen in magazine photos. But surely you have friends, teammates. Tennis is an individual sport. You're out there alone, even when you're surrounded by people, and everyone wants something from you: sponsors, media, fans. It's hard to know who actually likes you versus who likes what you represent. I studied her face. There was a sadness there, hidden behind the confident smile. That sounds isolating. It is. She met my eyes again. What about you? Kids? Grandkids? Never had children. Jack and I tried for years, but it just wasn't meant to be. By the time we thought about adoption, we were both so deep in our careers that we convinced ourselves we were too busy. I shrugged, trying to make it sound casual. One of those life regrets you carry around. I'm sorry, don't be. We had a good marriage. 40 years together before the cancer took him. That's more than most people get. She was quiet for a moment, processing this. Do you miss it, being married? The question caught me off guard. Sometimes, not the marriage itself, necessarily, but having someone. Having a person who knows your coffee order and whether you had a good day just by looking at your face. Someone to share the small moments with. Yes, she said softly. Exactly. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the Sunday. Morning crowd flow in and out of the cafe. Young couples with strollers, college students hunched over laptops, elderly men reading newspapers and arguing about politics. Normal people living normal lives. Can I ask you something? Claudia said eventually. Shoot, what was it like? 40 years of marriage? My longest relationship was maybe 6 months. I considered the question. Terrifying and wonderful and boring and exciting, sometimes all in the same day. It's not like the movies, you know? It's not grand gestures and dramatic declarations of love. It's choosing each other every single day, even when you don't particularly like each other. It's learning that love isn't just a feeling, it's a decision you make over and over again. She was hanging on every word. That sounds incredible. It was, but it was also work, hard work. Anyone who tells you otherwise is lying or hasn't been married very long. I don't think I'm built for that kind of work, she said, but there was something wistful in her voice. Why not? My lifestyle, for one thing. I'm never in one place for more than a few weeks. And I single quotes intense, competitive. I don't know how to do anything halfway. I smiled. You say that like it's a bad thing. It is when it comes to relationships. I've been told I'm too much more times than I can count. Then you were dating the wrong people. She looked at me sharply. What do you mean? Anyone who thinks passion is too much doesn't deserve access to it. The right person won't want you to dim your light, they'll want to bask in it. Something shifted in her expression. A spark of recognition, maybe, or hope. You really believe that? I do. She reached across the table and covered my hand with hers. Mary Anderson, she said, reading my name from the credit card I'd left on the table. You are not at all what I expected to find at a flea market this morning. What did you expect to find? I don't know. Vintage jewelry? A cool lamp? Definitely. Not a woman who could make me rethink everything I thought I knew about myself. My heart did something acrobatic in my chest. This was dangerous territory. This beautiful, successful woman half my age was looking at me like I hung the moon, and every rational part of my brain was screaming warnings. But there was another part of me, a part that had been dormant for so long. I'd forgotten it existed, that was purring with satisfaction. Claudia, I started, not sure what I was going to say. I know, she said quietly. I know this is crazy. I know we just met, and I know there are about a million reasons why this is a terrible idea. But I also know that I haven't felt this awake in years. This what? Interested, curious, attracted. She paused, her thumb tracing circles on the back of my hand. When was the last time you felt attracted to someone? The honest answer was never. Not like this. Not with this electric, all-consuming intensity that made me want to do reckless things. Even with Jack, our attraction had been comfortable, familiar. This was something else entirely. I should go, I said, but I made no move to leave. Should. You? Yes, this is where different ages, from different worlds, strangers who met 3 hours ago. She smiled. Yeah, I'm aware of all of that. But I'm also aware that I feel more like myself sitting here with you than I have in months. Aren't you even a little curious about where this could go? The smart thing to do was say no. Thank her for the coffee, go home to my quiet apartment, and pretend this never happened. The smart thing was to remember that I was a sensible woman who didn't get swept off her feet by charming strangers. Instead, I heard myself saying, "What did you have in mind?" Her grin was like sunshine. Dinner. Tonight. Somewhere quiet where we can actually talk. I don't know if that's wise. Probably not, she agreed. But wisdom is overrated, don't you think? She picked me up at 7 in a black Tesla that probably cost more than I'd made in my last 2 years of nursing. I'd spent an embarrassing amount of time getting ready, trying on 3 different outfits before settling on a simple black dress and my grandmother's pearl necklace. I felt ridiculous, like a teenager getting ready for prom. "You look beautiful," she said when I got in the car, and the way she said it made me believe her. She'd chosen a small Italian restaurant about 20 minutes from my apartment, the kind of family-owned place where the owner greets regulars by name and the wine list is written on a chalkboard. It was intimate without being romantic, casual, enough that I didn't feel overdressed, but nice enough that I felt special. "How did you find this place?" I asked as we settled into a corner booth. My trainer's wife is Italian. She recommended it when I told her I wanted somewhere low key. "You told your trainer about me?" She had the grace to look embarrassed. I might have mentioned that I'd met someone interesting. The waiter brought us wine, a Chianti, that was far better than anything I usually splurged on, and we fell into easy conversation. She told me about growing up shuttling between her parents' homes, about starting tennis at age 5, about the grueling training schedule that had defined her entire life. I told her about nursing school, about the cases that had kept me up at night, about the small victories that made the difficult shifts worthwhile. "Do you miss it?" she asked over her second glass of wine. "Nursing? Some of it. I miss feeling useful, feeling like what I did mattered. Retirement is quieter than I expected." "You could go back, couldn't you? Work part-time somewhere?" I shrugged. At my age, most places want younger nurses. More energy, fewer bathroom breaks. I smiled to show I was joking, but we both knew there was truth in it. That's ageism. That's healthcare. She frowned, clearly bothered by this. There has to be somewhere that would value your experience. Maybe I haven't looked very hard, to be honest. After Jack died, I just wanted to stop. Stop running around. Stop being responsible for other people's lives. Stop pretending I had everything figured out. And now? Now I'm wondering if maybe I stopped a little too completely. She reached across the table and took my hand again. It was becoming a habit, this casual touching, and I was getting addicted to it. "Maybe this is the universe telling you it's time to start again. Is that what you think this is, the universe?" "I think," she said, her thumb tracing patterns on my palm, "that some things are too perfect to be coincidence." The food was excellent, but I barely tasted it. I was too focused on her, the way she gestured when she talked, the way her eyes lit up when she laughed, the way she listened like every word I said was important. It had been so long since someone had paid attention to me like this, since someone had seen me as more than just a nice old lady who'd lived a respectable life and was now quietly fading into irrelevance. "Can I ask you something that might be too personal?" she said over dessert. At this point, I think we're past worrying about too personal. When Jack died, did you think that was it for you? Romantically? I mean, I considered the question. I thought. I thought I'd have my turn. My one great love, my marriage, my life as half of a couple. I figured the next phase would be about other things, grandchildren I don't have, hobbies, volunteering, gracefully aging into irrelevance. That sounds lonely. It is lonely. But it also seemed appropriate, I guess, realistic. Women my age aren't exactly fighting off suitors. You might be surprised. Something in her tone made me look up sharply. "What do you mean?" "I mean," she said, meeting my eyes steadily, "that you're one of the most attractive women I've ever met. And age has nothing to do with it." My face went hot. "Claudia, I'm serious. The way you carry yourself, the way you think, the way you listen, really listen when someone talks. The way you touched my wrist this morning like healing people is still part of your DNA. That's..." Incredibly sexy. I stared at her, speechless. No one had called me sexy in, well, ever, probably. Jack had called me pretty, beautiful sometimes, but sexy, that wasn't a word that had ever been associated with me. You don't believe me, she observed. I don't know what to believe. This whole day feels like something that's happening to someone else. Look at me, she said softly. I met her eyes. I know this is complicated. I know we're from different worlds, different generations. I know there are 1,000 reasons why this doesn't make sense, but I also know that I haven't been able to. Stop thinking about you since this morning. I know that talking to you feels like coming home after a very long trip. And I know that the thought of saying goodbye to you tonight and never seeing you again makes me physically ill. My heart was pounding so hard I was sure she could hear it. What are you saying? I'm saying I'd like to see you again. I'm saying I'd like to figure out what this is between us. I'm saying that maybe, just maybe, you haven't had your turn yet. I looked down at our joined hands, hers smooth and strong from years of gripping tennis rackets, mine wrinkled and spotted with age. The contrast was stark, impossible to ignore. I'm old enough to be your mother, I said quietly. So people will stare, they'll talk, they'll have opinions. Let them. Your career is my business. And my personal life is my personal life. It's not that simple when you're famous. She was quiet for a moment, considering this. You're right, it's not simple. There would be media attention, probably some backlash. People can be cruel, especially online. She paused. Is that a deal breaker for you? I thought about it, really thought about it. The idea of being in the public eye, of having strangers dissect our relationship, was terrifying. I've lived a quiet life, a private life. I wasn't built for scrutiny, but I was also tired of being invisible. I don't know, I said honestly. That's okay. We don't have to figure everything out tonight. We don't have to figure anything out tonight. I just thought. I'd like to spend more time with you, see where this goes. Would you be willing to try? I looked at her, really looked at her. This incredible woman who could have anyone she wanted, who was choosing to spend her evening with a retired nurse from suburban Chicago. This woman who made me feel like I was 30 again, like anything was possible. Yes, I heard myself say. I'd be willing to try. What followed was the most surreal month of my life. Claudia was between tournaments, taking a rare break before the year-end championships, which meant she was staying at her mother's house in Millfield. She drove to see me almost every day. We went to museums, art galleries, bookstores. We had picnics in the park and long dinners at restaurants where she insisted we sit at corner tables and speak in whispers. Like we were having an affair, which I supposed we were. We watched old movies at my apartment, her head on my shoulder, while Cary Grant charmed Grace Kelly on my ancient television. She was unlike anyone I'd ever known. Intense and focused, yes, but also surprisingly gentle. She remembered everything. I told her the names of my coworkers from 30 years ago, my favorite flower, peonies, the fact that I took my coffee black but my tea with honey. She asked questions about my life like it was the most fascinating story she'd ever heard. And slowly, carefully, she was seducing me, not in the obvious ways. She never pressured me for more physical intimacy than I was comfortable with. But she had a way of looking at me that made my skin flush, of touching my arm or my hand that sent electricity through my entire body. She complimented me constantly, my intelligence, my humor, my insight, until I started to see myself through her eyes. It was intoxicating and terrifying in equal measure. I can't stop thinking about you, she confessed one evening as we walked along the lakefront. The October air was crisp, and she'd given me her jacket when I shivered. It smelled like her. Perfume, something expensive and subtle that made me want to bury my face in it. You're leaving soon, I reminded her. The championships were in 3 weeks in New York, and then she'd be gone until the spring. I am. What happens then? She stopped walking and turned to face me. What do you want to happen? It was a fair question, but I didn't have a fair answer. What I wanted was impossible: to freeze this moment, this feeling, this version of myself who felt alive and desired and interesting. What I wanted was to follow her around the world, watching her play tennis and falling asleep in hotel rooms with her. What I wanted was to be young enough, confident enough, brave enough to leap without looking. I don't know, I said. She stepped closer, close enough that I could feel the warmth radiating from her body. Can I kiss you? We'd been dancing around this for weeks. Lingering looks, casual touches, an undercurrent of desire that grew stronger every day. But we hadn't crossed that line yet, and part of me wondered if I was imagining the whole thing. Here, I looked around. The lakefront path was mostly empty, but there were still joggers and dog walkers around. Here, she confirmed. My heart was hammering. What if someone sees? Then they see two people who care about each other sharing a kiss. The horror. Her tone was teasing, but her eyes were serious. Mary, I need you to know something. I don't care who sees. I don't care what anyone thinks. I only care about you. And then she was kissing me, soft and sweet and perfect, and all my protests melted away. Her hands framed my face like I was something precious, and when she pulled back, her eyes were bright with unshed tears. Was that okay? She whispered. I couldn't speak, could only nod. It was more than okay. It was everything I hadn't realized I'd been waiting for. The photo showed up online 3 days later. I was making coffee when my phone started buzzing. Text after text from numbers I didn't recognize, missed calls from area codes I'd never seen. I ignored them at first, assuming it was some kind of spam attack. But then my neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, knocked on my door with a concerned expression and a printout from some gossip website. Mary, dear, she said carefully, there's something you should see. The headline read, Tennis star Claudia Price's secret older woman who is the mystery girlfriend. Below, it was a photo of us from the lakefront, the moment right before. Our first kiss. Claudia's hands on my face, both of us looking at each other with obvious adoration. It was actually a beautiful photo, if you could ignore the invasive circumstances of its existence. But the comments were brutal. Gold digger much? Desperate much? This is embarrassing. Someone's having a midlife crisis. Poor Claudia. Hope she comes to her senses soon. This is what happens when athletes get too much. Attention. My phone rang. Claudia. Mary, I just saw. I have to go, I said, hanging up. For the next hour, I sat on my couch, staring at that photo, reading comment after comment, dissecting our relationship, our motives, our very right to exist in the same space. The internet, it seemed, had opinions about us. My doorbell rang. I ignored it. It rang again and again. Finally, I opened the door to find Claudia standing there with 2 bags of groceries and a determined expression. We need to talk, she said, pushing past me into the apartment. I don't think. No, you're going to listen to me. She set the bags down and turned to face me. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking this is too much, too complicated, too public. You're thinking you should walk away before it gets worse. She wasn't wrong. But here's the thing, Mary. I've spent my entire adult life caring about what other people think, caring about my image, my reputation, my marketability. And you know what it's gotten me? A lonely existence where I perform my life for strangers who don't actually know me at all. She stepped closer, but with you, I don't have to perform. I can just be myself. And myself happens to be completely, utterly, hopelessly in love with a 62-year-old retired nurse from Chicago. My breath caught. Love? Love, she confirmed. Inconvenient, irrational, age inappropriate love. And I'm not going to apologize for it. I stared at her, this fierce, beautiful woman who was willing to weather a media storm for me. Claudia, I have a proposition for you. What kind of proposition? She reached into one of the grocery bags and pulled out a small velvet box. My heart stopped. Not what you think, she said quickly, seeing my expression. I mean, maybe eventually what you think, but not today. She opened the box to reveal a simple silver key. It's to my house in Miami. I want you to come with me. Come with you where? Everywhere. The championships in New York, the off-season training in Miami, the European clay court season in the spring. I want you to travel with me. I felt dizzy. As what? As my everything, my girlfriend, my partner, my support system. My person, she paused. The media is going to be interested in us whether we hide or not. So why don't we give them something real to write about? I can't just I have a life here. An apartment, responsibilities. What responsibilities? You're retired. You have no family here, no job. What's keeping you in Chicago besides fear? The question hit like a slap. She was right, and we both knew it. My life in Chicago was small, quiet, safe. It was also empty. This is crazy, I said weakly. Maybe, but I'd rather be crazy with you than sane without you. She took my hands in hers. Look, I know this is a lot. I know I'm asking you to completely upend your life for someone you've known for a month. But I also know that what we have is rare, and I don't want to waste it because we're scared of what other people might think. I looked down at the key in the little velvet box. Such a small thing, but it represented everything: adventure, risk, the possibility of a life I'd never imagined for myself. What if it doesn't work out? Then it doesn't work out. But at least we'll know we tried. She squeezed my hands. Mary, I've never asked anyone to follow me around the world. I've never wanted anyone to, but I want you to. I need you to. Because the thought of going back to that lonely existence without you makes me want to quit tennis entirely. I studied her face, seeing the vulnerability beneath the confidence. She was as scared as I was, I realized. She was just braver about it. You're really in love with me? I asked completely. Why? She smiled. Because you see me. The real me, not the tennis player or the brand or the image. Because you make me laugh. Because you're kind and smart and sexy as hell. And because when I'm with you, I feel like the best version of myself. I love you too, I said quietly, the words slipping out before I could stop them. Her face lit up like I'd just given her the greatest gift in the world. Yeah, it terrifies me, but yeah. She kissed me then, fierce and desperate and full of promise. And when we broke apart, she pressed the velvet box into my hands. So, what do you say? Want to run away and join the circus? I looked at the key, at her hopeful face, at the bags of groceries she'd brought, like she was planning to stay, whether I said yes or not. What the hell? I said. Let's do it. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of preparation and controversy. I gave notice on my apartment lease, sold most of my furniture, and packed 40 years of life into 6 suitcases. Claudia hired a publicist to help manage the narrative, though I wasn't sure what narrative could possibly make a 62-year-old woman dating a 38-year-old. Tennis star seemed normal. The media attention was relentless. Photographers followed us to dinner. Reporters called my old coworkers, asking for quotes about my character. And the internet continued to have feelings about our relationship. Some of the coverage was supportive. Few think pieces about love having no expiration date, some celebrity endorsements of our right to happiness. But most of it was either mocking or cruel. The worst was a particularly nasty article in a British tabloid that included photos of me from 30 years ago alongside recent paparazzi shots with the headline, "From Frump to Trump, How Tennis Star Claudia Price's Sugar Mama Won the Lottery." I read it over breakfast while Claudia was training, and by the time she got home, I was a wreck. "We have to stop this," I said when she walked in the door. "This is destroying your reputation." She took one look at my face and sat down beside me. "What happened?" I showed her the article. She read it in silence, her expression growing darker with every paragraph. "This is garbage," she said finally. "You know that, right? Is it? Look at these photos, Claudia. Look at us objectively. I'm an old woman who looks like someone's grandmother. Any single quotes redot.u. Of course, people think I'm using you for money. Are you using me for money? No. Then fuck what they think. It's not that simple. Your sponsors can kiss my ass if they have a problem with who I choose to love. You can't mean that. Your career is not more important than you." I stared at her. "But tennis is your life. Tennis is what I do. You're who I am." She pulled me into her arms. "Mary, listen to me. I've been dealing with media bullshit for 20 years. This will blow over. There will be some other scandal next week and everyone will forget about us. What if they don't? Then they don't. And we'll deal with whatever comes." She tilted my chin up so I had to meet her eyes. "But I'm not giving you up because some strangers on the internet have opinions about our relationship." That night, she did something that both thrilled and terrified me. She posted a photo on Instagram, the two of us at dinner, laughing at something I'd said, looking completely natural and happy together. The caption was simple: "Age is just a number. Happiness isn't." The response was immediate and polarizing. Her comments filled with everything from heart emojis to death threats. Several sports commentators weighed in. Her agent called 3 times before she finally answered. "How bad?" she asked when she hung up. "Bad. 2 sponsors are threatening to pull out. The Williams sisters management company wants to distance themselves from any promotional appearances with me. And the WTA is concerned about my recent life choices. I felt sick. This is my fault." "No, it's not. It's their fault for being small-minded as holes." She paced the length of her Miami living room, all nervous energy and barely contained. Fury. "You know what? Fuck it." "What do you mean, fuck it?" She stopped pacing and looked at me with a smile that was equal parts mischievous and determined. "I mean, if they want a scandal, let's give them a real scandal." Before I could ask what she meant, my phone buzzed with a banking notification. I looked at the screen and nearly dropped the phone. $5 million deposited into your account. "What the hell is this?" I demanded, showing her the screen. She grinned. "Insurance. For what?" "For you to stop worrying about money. For you to know I'm all in. And for you to stop pretending you don't love me too." I stared at her, speechless. $5 million. She just casually transferred $5 million into my account like it was pocket change. "Claudia, I can't, you can't just..." "I can, and I did." Her expression grew serious. "Look, I know what you're going to say. That it's too much. That you didn't ask for this. That you don't want my money. But here's the thing, I don't want you making decisions about us based on financial security. I don't want you staying with me because you gave up your apartment, and I don't want you leaving me because you're worried about what happens if this doesn't work out." I was still staring at the number on my phone screen. $5 million. More money than I'd ever imagined having. "This is insane," I whispered. "Maybe, but so is everything else about us." She sat down beside me, taking my hands in hers. "Mary, I've made more money playing tennis than I could spend in 10 lifetimes. What's the point of having it if I can't use it to protect the people I love? But $5 million, is a fraction of what I'm worth and all of what you're worth. To me, she squeezed my hands. Besides, now when people say you're only with me for my money, you can tell them you have your own. I looked at her, this impossible, generous, infuriating woman who just made me independently wealthy without asking if I wanted to be. You're completely crazy. Completely, she agreed. But I'm crazy about you. And despite everything, the media circus, the public scrutiny, the sheer impossibility of our situation, I kissed her because she was right. What we had was rare, and I'd be damned if I was going to let the opinions of strangers destroy it. The U.S. Open Series finals were held at Madison Square Garden, and Claudia had gotten me courtside seats. I'd never been to a professional tennis match before, and the energy in the arena was electric. Thousands of people screaming, the sharp crack of rackets against balls, the intensity of competition at the highest level. But all I could focus on was her. She was magnificent on the court, powerful, graceful, completely in control. I understood now why she was ranked number 3 in the world. Every shot was calculated, every movement purposeful. She played like a woman possessed, and I couldn't look away. Between sets, she found me in the crowd and smiled. Just for a second, just long enough for me to see the woman I'd fallen in love with beneath the fierce competitor. The cameras caught it, of course. By the time the match was over, Claudia won in straight sets. Social media was buzzing about the mystery girlfriend in the stands. But I didn't care anymore. Let them buzz. After her victory speech and the trophy presentation, after the interviews and the photo shoots, she found me in the family area where I'd been waiting with her mother and her coach. "Hi," she said, slightly breathless, still glowing from her win. "Higher self, champion." She'd been planning to celebrate with her team at some exclusive restaurant, but instead she asked if we could just go back to the hotel and order room service. We ended up on the bed in our bathrobes, eating overpriced pasta and watching the late-night sports shows analyze her performance. "They keep calling it your comeback season," I observed as ESPN replayed highlights of her match. "I guess it is in a way." She was lying with her head on my lap, and I was absently running my fingers through her hair. "I was pretty lost before I met you. Going through the motions, playing because it was all I knew how to do. And now I have something to play for." She turned to look up at me. "Someone to come home to." My heart did that fluttering thing it had been doing a lot lately. "Is that what I am? Home?" "You're everything," she said simply. The next morning brought fresh controversy. Someone had leaked photos of us in our robes, clearly taken through the hotel room window with a long-range camera. The invasion of privacy was appalling, but what upset me more was Claudia's reaction. She was quiet during breakfast, scrolling through her phone with an increasingly dark expression. "What is it?" I asked finally. She turned the phone toward me. The headline read, "Claudia Price's sugar baby lifestyle inside their luxury hotel love nest." "I'm going to sue them," she said flatly. "This is harassment. Will that help or make it worse?" "I don't care. I'm not going to let them treat you like this." But the damage was already done. By afternoon, 3 more sponsors had pulled out of her contracts. Her agent was fielding calls from tournament directors expressing concern about the distraction her personal life was causing. The WTA issued a statement about maintaining professional standards that everyone understood was directed at us. That evening, we had dinner with her mother, a lovely Swedish woman named Astrid, who'd been nothing but welcoming to me despite the obvious strangeness of the situation. "The tour is pressuring her to choose," Astrid said quietly while Claudia was in the bathroom. "Tennis or you?" I'd suspected as much. "What do you think she should do?" Astrid studied me for a long moment. "I think," she said finally, "that my daughter has never been happier." And I think happiness is more important than tennis. Even if it costs her everything she's worked for, especially then. She reached across the table and patted my hand. Besides, she's 38. She has maybe 3 good years left anyway. What's she going to do after tennis? At least with you, she has a future that doesn't involve hitting balls for a living. When Claudia returned, she was holding her phone with a strange expression. What now? I asked, dreading the answer. Jimmy Fallon wants us on his show. I blinked. What? His people called. They want to do a segment about unconventional love stories. Apparently, we're trending on Twitter. I looked at Astrid, who shrugged. This is your world now, Mary. Might as well embrace it. 2 weeks later, we were sitting on a couch in 30 Rockefeller Plaza while Jimmy Fallon asked us how we met. I'd been terrified about doing the show, convinced I'd make a fool of myself on national television. But Claudia had been insistent. If we're going to be public, let's be public on our own terms, she'd said. Let them see who we really are, instead of letting the tabloids define us. So you were at a flea market, Jimmy was saying, and you just struck up a conversation? Mary was looking at this vintage medical bag, Claudia explained. And she knew all this history about the doctor who might have owned it. I was fascinated. What fascinated you about medical history? Jimmy asked me. I was a nurse for 40 years, I said, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. You develop an appreciation for the tools of the trade. And what fascinated? You about Claudia? I looked at her, sitting beside me in a gorgeous blue dress that brought out her eyes. She listened, really listened. Like what I had to say mattered. That's sweet. Now, I have to ask, there's been a lot of commentary about your age difference. How do you respond to that? I've been dreading this question, but Claudia answered. Before I could, we respond by being happy, she said simply. Mary makes me laugh every day. She makes me think, she challenges me, she supports me. Isn't that what matters in a relationship? What about you, Mary? How do you handle the attention? Honestly, it's been difficult. I lived a quiet life before this, but Claudia's worth it. I reached over and took her hand. What we have is real and it's ours. Everyone else can think whatever they want. The audience applauded and Jimmy smiled. That's beautiful. Now, Claudia, there have been reports that your relationship is affecting your career. Any truth to that? Claudia's jaw tightened slightly. Some people in the tennis world have expressed ... concerns, but tennis is what I do, not who I am. And I refuse to hide the person I love to make other people comfortable. Speaking of tennis, you just won the US Open Series. Are you planning to continue playing? Absolutely. I love the game, and I'm not done competing yet. Though I will say, having Mary in the stands gives me extra motivation. Extra motivation how? Claudia grinned. I want to impress her. Still, after all this time, I want her to think I'm cool. I laughed despite myself. I already think you're cool. See? Jimmy said to the audience. This is adorable. Now, Mary, what's it like dating someone famous? Weird, I said honestly, getting a laugh. I still can't get used to people taking our picture when we go to dinner. But Claudia is very patient with me. Patient how? She has to explain things like Instagram and Twitter to me. I'm not exactly digitally native, but you're learning. I'm trying. Though I still don't understand why anyone cares what I had for breakfast. The interview went on for another 10 minutes, covering everything from our travel plans to our favorite activities together, museums for me, tennis for her, cooking together for both of us. By the time it was over, I was actually enjoying myself. That wasn't so bad, I told Claudia as we left the studio. You were perfect, she said, kissing my cheek. Natural and funny and yourself. The response to the interview was overwhelmingly positive. Social media, which had been brutal before, suddenly filled with supportive comments. Hashtag Love Has No Age started trending. Several other celebrity couples with significant age differences posted supportive messages. But the real surprise came 3 days later when Claudia's phone rang at 6 in the morning. "It's my agent," she said, looking at the caller ID. "This early? That can't be good." She answered the call, and I watched her expression change from concern to confusion to outright shock. "What?" I asked when she hung up. "Nike wants to sign." And me, I blinked. "Isn't that good? It's incredible. They want to build an entire campaign around us. Love wins or something like that. They're offering more money than I've ever made from a single sponsor because of us, because of us. Apparently, we've become some kind of symbol for authentic love or something." She shook her head in disbelief. "My agent says 3 other companies are interested too." I sat down heavily on the bed. "So let me get this straight. The tennis world was trying to pressure you to choose between me and your career, but now your career is actually benefiting from our relationship?" "It appears so. That's completely insane." "Yeah." We looked at each other for a moment, and then we both started laughing. The whole situation was so ridiculous, so impossible, so perfectly fitting for our impossible relationship. The Australian Open was in January, which meant we spent Christmas and New Year's in Melbourne. It was summer there, strange and wonderful. And Claudia had rented a house on the beach for the month-long tournament. She was playing the best tennis of her career. The media attention had died down somewhat. We were old news now. Just another celebrity couple, but the support from her new sponsors had given her a confidence I'd never seen before. She swept through the early rounds without dropping a set. I was sitting in our usual spot in the player's box when she made it to the semifinals. The match was brutal 3 sets, over 3 hours, against a Russian player ranked number 2 in the world. But Claudia fought for every point, and when she finally won, she collapsed on the court in exhaustion and relief. The cameras followed her as she climbed into the stands to hug her team, her mother, and finally me. "I love you," she whispered in my ear, sweaty and glowing and magnificent. "I love you too, champion." 2 days later, she was in the finals. I'd never been so nervous in my life. Claudia had been to Grand Slam finals before, but never while I'd been watching, and the pressure felt enormous. The entire stadium was electric, with anticipation. The match was everything a final should be: dramatic, emotional, a showcase of the absolute pinnacle of athletic ability. Claudia's opponent was a 22-year-old phenom from Spain who played with the fearless abandon of someone who had nothing to lose. But Claudia had something the young player didn't: experience, and more importantly, something to play for beyond herself. When she won 6-4, 7-5 in straight sets, the roar of the crowd was deafening. She fell to her knees on the court, racket raised above her head, tears streaming down her face. I was crying too, so proud I could barely breathe. The trophy presentation was a blur of champagne and cameras and speeches, but then something unexpected happened. Instead of giving the traditional winner's speech, Claudia set down the microphone and gestured for me to join her on the court. "What are you doing?" I asked as security helped me down from the stands. "Something I should have done months ago," she said. The crowd had gone quiet, confused by this departure from protocol. Claudia took my hands in front of 15,000 people and a global television audience of millions. "Mary Anderson," she said, her voice carrying clearly through the arena's sound system. "You once said you were too old for chaos, but will you be my wife anyway?" She dropped to one knee right there on the tennis court, pulling out a ring that caught the stadium lights and threw rainbows across the blue surface. The crowd went absolutely insane. I stared down at her. This incredible woman who just won her first Grand Slam and was now proposing to me in front of the entire world. The ring was beautiful, simple solitaire that somehow looked exactly like what I've chosen for myself. Are you serious? I managed to say. Never been more serious about anything in my life. I looked around at the crowd, at the cameras, at the sheer public spectacle of the moment. 3 months ago, I would have been mortified by the attention. Now, now I just felt grateful that this was my life. Yes, I said, loud enough for the microphones to pick up. Yes, of course, yes. She slipped the ring onto my finger and stood to kiss me, and the crowd's roar was so loud it was almost physically painful. Confetti cannons went off. Fireworks lit up the Melbourne sky. Somewhere in the chaos, someone handed Claudia a microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, she said, grinning so wide I thought her face might split in half. I'd like you to meet my fiancée, Mary Anderson. The engagement video went viral within hours. Not just tennis viral, actual viral. We were on every news program, every talk show, every social media platform. The proposal had been so public, so joyful, so obviously authentic that even our harshest critics seemed to be won over. The engagement ring had a story, of course. Claudia had been carrying it around for weeks, waiting for the right moment. Her original plan had been to propose privately, maybe on the beach in Melbourne. But winning the Australian Open had made her so euphoric, so grateful for everything she had, that she'd wanted to share it with the world. No regrets? I asked her later that night as we soaked in the bathtub of a rented house, the championship, trophy sitting on the bathroom counter, about proposing in front of 15,000 people. None whatsoever. About proposing to me? She turned in the tub to face me. Mary, marrying you is going to be the greatest victory of my life. And I've won a lot of things. Planning a wedding while constantly traveling turned out to be a logistical nightmare, but Claudia hired a team of professionals who somehow made it work. We decided on a small ceremony, just close family and friends, but even small became complicated when you factored in media interest and security concerns. Finally, we settled on a beach in the Maldives, far enough from civilization that paparazzi couldn't easily reach us. Claudia's mother flew in from Sweden, along with a handful of her closest friends from tennis. I invited my two closest friends from nursing school and my elderly neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, who'd become something of a surrogate grandmother to both of us. The ceremony was perfect, simple, intimate, with our feet in the sand and the Indian Ocean stretching endlessly in front of us. I wore a white dress that Claudia had helped me pick out, elegant but not too young, sophisticated but not severe. She wore a stunning cream-colored suit that made her look like a movie star. When the officiant asked if we had personal vows, Claudia spoke first. Mary, she said, her voice steady despite the tears in her eyes, 6 months ago, I was the loneliest person I knew. I had everything the world told me I should want, fame, money, success, but I felt empty. And then I met you at a flea market on a Sunday morning, and suddenly everything made sense. She paused, looking out at the ocean before meeting my eyes. Again, you taught me that love doesn't care about timelines or expectations. You taught me that being seen and being loved are the same thing. You taught me that home isn't a place, it's a person. And you're my person, Mary. You're my home, my heart, my everything. I promise to love you whether you're 30 or 60 or 90. I promise to choose you every day for the rest of my life. By the time she finished, there wasn't a dry eye on the beach. Mary, the officiant prompted. I took a shaky breath. I'd written vows, practiced them in the mirror, but standing there looking at this magnificent woman who'd chosen me, all my carefully planned words flew out of my head. Claudia, I said finally, I thought I knew what love was. I had 40 years of marriage, and I thought that was my one shot at happiness. I thought at 62 my story was basically over, that the rest would just be a quiet fade to black. I reached out and took her hands. that you didn't just give me a second chance at love, you gave me a second chance at life. You made me feel young and brave and beautiful. You made me remember who I was before I became just someone's wife, someone's nurse, someone's memory. With you, I'm Mary again. Just Mary, and that's enough. I was crying now, but I didn't care. I promised to follow you around the world as long as you'll have me. I promise to sit in the stands and cheer you on, and to be here when you're ready to stop playing. I promise to love you with the wisdom of age and the excitement of youth. I promise to never stop being amazed that this is my life now. When the officiant pronounced us married, when we kissed as wives for the first time, the small group of our loved ones cheered like we just won Wimbledon. The first year of marriage was a whirlwind of adjustment. I learned to live out of suitcases, to sleep in a different hotel room every few days, to navigate airports and customs lines and the strange rhythm of professional tennis. But I also learned the joy of waking up every morning next to someone who chose me, who continued choosing me every single day. Claudia's game reached new heights. With me traveling with her full time, she had a stability she'd never experienced before. Someone to eat meals with, someone to talk through matches with, someone to share the victories and cushion the defeats. She won 2 more Grand Slams that year and finished ranked #1 in the world for the first time in her career. I became something of a fixture on the tour. The other players' wives and girlfriends welcomed me into their informal support network, and I discovered I had a talent for keeping everyone calm during stressful tournaments. My nursing background made me the unofficial team medic, and I loved feeling useful again. But more than anything, I loved being Claudia's wife. She was an incredibly thoughtful partner, always making sure I had everything I needed, checking that I was comfortable with our travel schedule, including me in every decision about our life together. She learned to make my grandmother's recipe for chicken soup when I got sick in Prague. She bought me a Kindle and downloaded every book I mentioned wanting to read. She held my hand during turbulence and rubbed my feet after long days of walking around foreign cities. And the sex. Well, let's just say that whoever thinks passion ends at 60 clearly hasn't met the right person. 2 years into our marriage, Claudia started talking about retirement. I'm 39, she said one evening as we sat on the balcony of our hotel room in Rome. Most players retire younger than that. My body's starting to protest all the travel and training. What would you do instead? I've been thinking about coaching, maybe running a tennis academy, something that keeps me involved in the sport, but doesn't require quite so much physical punishment. I took her hand. What would that mean for us? It would mean settling down somewhere, having a real home instead of living out of suitcases. Maybe ... She hesitated. Maybe thinking about a family. My heart skipped. A family? I know your past. I mean, biologically, it would have to be. She was stumbling over her words, adorable in her nervousness. Claudia, I said gently, are you talking about having children? Maybe, I don't know. Is that crazy? I'm 39, you're 64. We'd be the oldest parents at every school event. I thought about it, really thought about it. The idea of being a mother had been a dream I'd given up decades ago. But with modern fertility treatments, with Claudia's determination and financial resources, it would be difficult. I said slowly, IVF at your age isn't easy. And you're right about our ages. But if it's what you want, if it's what we want, why not? We've already proven that conventional wisdom doesn't apply to us. Her face lit up. Really? You want that? To start a family with me? Claudia, I want everything with you. Every adventure, every challenge, every joy. If that includes children, then yes, absolutely yes. She kissed me then, soft and sweet and full of possibility. Claudia announced her retirement after winning her 4th Grand Slam at Wimbledon. She was 39 at the top of her game and ready for the next phase of her life. The tennis world was shocked players usually announced their retirement after a disappointing season, not after their best year ever. But Claudia had never been conventional. We bought a house in Sarasota, Florida, big enough for the family we hoped to have, with a pool and a tennis court and a garden where I could grow the vegetables I'd been dreaming about for years. Claudia started working with architects to design her tennis academy, while I researched fertility clinics and adoption agencies. The IVF process was emotionally and physically exhausting. 3 failed cycles, each one breaking our hearts a little more. But on the 4th try, the call came. "It worked," Claudia whispered, staring at the positive pregnancy test. "Mary, it actually worked." I held her while she cried, both of us overwhelmed by the reality of what we'd accomplished. The pregnancy wasn't easy. Claudia had severe morning sickness for the first 4 months, and I became a full-time caregiver again, making sure she ate enough, rested enough, took her vitamins. But seeing her body change, seeing her glow with the knowledge that she was growing our child, was the most beautiful thing I'd ever witnessed. We had a daughter, Astrid Mary Price Anderson, born on a Tuesday afternoon in March. She was perfect, tiny and wrinkled and absolutely ours. When the nurse placed her in my arms for the first time, I understood what people meant when they talked about love at first sight. "She looks like you," Claudia murmured from the hospital bed. "She looks like herself," I said, but I was secretly thrilled. Astrid had my nose, my chin, something indefinable that connected us despite sharing no DNA. "Are you happy?" Claudia asked. I looked down at her daughter, then at my wife, exhausted but radiant, the woman who'd given me everything I'd never dared to dream of. "I'm more than happy," I said. "I'm complete." Astrid is 5 now, a whirlwind of energy and curiosity who calls me Mama Mary and Claudia just Mama. She plays tennis like her mother and asks endless questions about the human body like her grandmother, the nurse. She's bilingual, Claudia speaks to her in Swedish. I speak to her in English, and she's already showing signs of the fierce determination that runs in the Price family. Claudia's tennis academy is thriving. She works with young players, helping them navigate not just the technical aspects of the game, but the mental and emotional challenges of competitive sports. She's known for her holistic approach, her emphasis on having a life outside tennis, her belief that athletes need support systems to truly succeed. As for me, I volunteer at the local hospital twice a week, using my nursing skills to help train new graduates. I also work part-time at the academy, handling the medical side of athlete care. It's the perfect blend of my old life and my new one. People still ask me about our age difference, about the unconventional nature of our relationship. But those questions don't bother me anymore. What Claudia and I have is real, deep, lasting. We've been together for 8 years now, married for 6, and I love her more today than I did when she proposed on that tennis court in Melbourne. Love, I've learned, doesn't follow a schedule. It doesn't check your ID or your bank account or your 5-year plan. It just arrives, sometimes in the most unexpected places, and asks if you're brave enough to say yes. I was brave enough. And every morning when I wake up next to my wife, every evening when we sit on our porch watching our daughter play in the garden, every moment of this impossible, beautiful life we've built together, I'm grateful that I said yes. They say you can't teach an old dog new tricks. But sometimes, if you're very lucky, life teaches you that you were never too old to begin again. You were just waiting for the right person to show you how. And sometimes that person finds you at a flea market on a Sunday morning examining vintage medical equipment and wondering if this is all there is. Sometimes that person changes everything. Sometimes that person gives you a love story worth telling. This is mine.